sit here and speak? Or sit here and speak?
Yeah.
Okay.
You may sit down. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the public defense of Getrude Isimon's PhD dissertation at the International Institute of Social Studies of Erasmus University Rotterdam. May I ask all of you to switch off your mobile phones to silent mode, please, so that we have no interruption. Okay. I declare the meeting open. I bid you, Ms. Getrude Isimon, most heartily welcome. You may now give a brief exposition of your research, of your reasons for having undertaken it, and of the results it has yielded. Please.
Director Magnificence, the doctoral examiners, my supervisors, colleagues, friends and family, good afternoon everyone, thank you for coming. Uganda has had serious violent conflicts running concurrently over quite a prolonged period of time, notably the civil war in northern Uganda with the LRA resistance, the Lord's Resistance Army against the government of Uganda, and communal violence among the Karamojong and with neighboring ethnic groups in northeastern parts of Uganda. As a child growing up in the city, several times I heard my father complaining about armed cattle raids by the Karamojong affecting our relatives in Teso region, pressurizing some of them to migrate to other districts. I was always curious, and my master's research at ISS focused on how these people in the frontier districts of Teso were able to respond to these livelihood challenges. After my master's, I was still curious, why had this violent conflict in Karamoja persisted for this long? And my original PhD proposal posed this question. With the guidance of my supervisors, approaching it in relation to another conflict typology such as civil war would be more interesting and relevant, a gap that had been highlighted by recent conflict literature. In recent conflict literature, scholars from Uppsala Conflict Data Program had raised questions about the interlinkages between communal violence and other conflict categories such as civil war. The Uppsala Conflict Data Program defined communal violence as the use of armed force between non-state groups along identity lines with no state involvement. The second, which is civil war, is an armed conflict between the state and a rebel faction, definitions which the study challenges. It is important to note that a lot of academic research had focused on civil war, even though communal violence was not a new phenomenon. After the launch of the non-state conflict dataset by the Uppsala Conflict Data Project, the first of its kind to provide systematic global data on group-to-group violence, the group at Uppsala posed questions highlighting the need for further research on the relationship between communal violence and other conflict categories such as civil war. These questions were raised after recent studies found that an estimated 81% of communal violence was witnessed in countries experiencing civil war at the same time. To examine these questions and look into the relationship between this conflict category, the study used the civil war in northern Uganda between the Lord's Resistance Army and the government of Uganda and the communal violence in the northeastern region of Uganda. The main question was facilitated by a set of sub-questions at the level of civil war and communal violence, looking into the causes of these conflicts, the actors involved, and how these conflicts changed course and direction, and how the nature of these course of these conflicts had an impact on how they have been conceptualized. To be able to comprehensively understand the cause of the conflict, the study blended 3 conceptual elements. 1, structure that involves analyzing the underlying causes of the conflicts. 2, the actors involved and their role their role in influencing the direction of these conflicts. 3, the conflict dynamics, which involved tracking the development of these conflicts. Since the study draws on a variety of elements to understand these violent conflicts, the political economy and identity explanatory approaches were used for the study. They were instrumental in understanding the interconnectedness of the modern state system, the global capitalism and governance to contemporary local conflicts, and the link between social identity and violent conflicts. For the methodology, the study took up a qualitative approach that involved reviewing a range of scholarly documents and primary sources, which involved individual and group data collection research tools with the target population. This study also looked closely at quantitative measures of these 2 conflicts in northern and northeastern Uganda, questioning the typologies and quantitative indicators used, as well as the key actors identified in these databases. Coming to the findings, the study found that these 2 conflict categories experience various conflict cycles, far from that clear conflict progression model, due to which they are under-theorized. In Karamoja, looking at Karamoja in northeastern Uganda, though communal violence was a cultural practice, communal violence had plagued the region, and the Karamojong were involved in conflict with their neighboring ethnic groups across frontier districts, cross-border ethnic groups in Kenya and Sudan throughout the pre-colonial, colonial, and much of the post-independent era. And recent efforts to disarm the region also led to occasional combat between the government forces and the Karamojong warriors as well, which some of these databases do not code. Then in northern Uganda, armed conflict between the Lord's Resistance Army and the government of Uganda that began in 1987 shifts to one-sided violence against the local population of Acholi land from 1987 onwards. After unsuccessful peace talks in 1993-1994, the LRA moves beyond the borders of northern Uganda into Sudan, and while in Sudan, the LRA engages in battlefield confrontations with the Sudan's People's Liberation Army and the UPDF forces as well. In 2003, after it's dislodged from Sudan, it also clashes with tribal militias in Teso and Lango region, eventually relocating to the DRC and then the Central African Republic. Moreover, the study also found that as these conflicts progressed, there were direct spillovers and unexpected effects on the cause of the other. Importantly, causal linkages showed that history matters. Both conflicts were connected to the wider ways in which the local society and Uganda were organized and governed in the colonial era that aggravated ethnic and regional divides. This was instrumental in the build-up and outbreak of armed conflict in northern Uganda and the continuation of violent conflict in northeastern Uganda. An ethnization and militarization of politics in the post-independence era, characterized with a history of coup d'etats that was accompanied with cycles of persecution and revenge, fostered mistrust and provided a fertile ground for the onset of the civil war in northern Uganda and the continuation of group-to-group violence in Karamoja. As conflicts evolve, other factors arise, contributing to their protraction. As such, the violent conflict in North and Northeastern Uganda spanned on for decades. The study found factors such as poverty, inequality, underdevelopment, and the rise of a war economy were instrumental in contributing to their protraction. Other than these, there were active linkages besides the central role of the state in the protraction of both conflicts. External actors and agencies such as Sudan, UK, Denmark, IMF, World Bank provided foreign military, economic, and political resources that were very instrumental in the protraction of these conflicts. Finally, coming to the conclusion, the research found that these conflicts are interlinked in complex ways. They have causal connections through political struggles at the national level and through deliberate state policies. Further, the interconnections between these conflicts is also found in how their cause had an impact on the other, fostering their protraction. In addition, the research also found that communal violence has pronounced levels of state involvement far from how they have been defined, and the way interstate conflicts are defined obscures the role of international processes and actors in these violent conflicts. In these violent conflicts. Excuse me. Yeah. Conclusion. Significantly, research shows that there is a need to review the criteria used in defining some of these violent conflicts, as they undermine the complex interconnections and dynamics within and between these violent conflicts. The study suggests the addition of an evidence-based approach to quantitative data-driven criteria when coding these conflicts. And how such violent conflicts are defined also influences how they are viewed, understood, and approached. A correct analysis of the history of these conflicts and understanding of the complexities involved is necessary and can aid in deriving proper intervention mechanisms and can go a long way in avoiding their protraction. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then we can go to the examiners. I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Getrude Isimon from Makerere University, Kampala, and I must add a PhD graduate from ISS. Witness the kappa that you're wearing. And I would like to ask you to start the exchange of ideas.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Dear candidate, I must congratulate you for this very insightful and comprehensive work you've undertaken. Thanks very much. I'd like to have a conversation with you on the conventional conflict study methodologies and approaches versus your own mixed approach. Your entry point is a critique of these conventional conflict approaches which maintain differences of typologies between civil wars and communal violence. And you convincingly show that show the complexity of these conflicts. However, it emerged that these approaches managed to construct a one-sided violence in which the Karamojong and the LRA We are the villains. So, to what